こんにちは、ペドロです。イントロだけ日本語でさせてくださいね。日本語勉強してる人って多分目的としてはペラペラになりたい、流暢になりたいと思ってるんですよね、きっと。ただそれはその自分の勉強を日本語の勉強を日本語だけで行うっていうのはもう避けて通れない道だと僕は思うんですよね。なぜかというと、その日本語の脳っていうんですかねを培うためにはまず日本語だけで勉強するのが大前提だと思うんです。ただそれは難しくて、本当にどうすればいいかわからないと思ってる人も多いんじゃないかなと思います。それでこの動画では日本語の辞書に慣れていくための4つのステップを提案したいと思います。ではよろしくお願いします。Okay, so as I said, I'm going to introduce you to 4 steps that you can follow in order so that you can finally be able to learn Japanese using only Japanese. And I will be focusing on the use of the dictionary, Japanese dictionaries. So as a first step, you should be looking for definitions of words that you already know. And the reason for that, the purpose of this step is to kind of not learn new words using the Japanese dictionary, but actually learning how the Japanese dictionary works. And the way that you should approach this step is that you should consider this as study. And you should choose a variety of words that you already know, that are already familiar with, and then you study their definitions in Japanese. And probably you will learn a lot of different patterns. Like for example, the words of use like mono, koto, sama, that are used all the time in dictionaries. So let me give you an example here. Let's choose a word like takai. Right? Very simple. Everybody learns what takai means. High. That means high, tall, expensive, these kind of things. And you can check the definition in Japanese for words like this. So takai in the digital daijisen. So number 1 here. 物が地面などの基準になるところからかなり上の位置にある. And here you have examples. So the line here represents where you should add the word you are searching for. So 日が高い、頭上高く、翻るはった、手を高く上げる. And the opposite word is 低い. You should study the definitions, but you're studying definitions of words you know, but the words you don't know, you still study them in English. So if you see this here and you don't know what jimen means, you should go for example, jisho.org, you copy jimen and check it. Ground, earth, surface, land, lot, plot, whatever. Which will make it easier for you to understand this definition in Japanese here. Okay, and how much should I be doing that until I'm ready for the next step? Well, actually, it's hard to tell something like that, but you really need to do that with a lot of words. It's not something that I'll just check 3 words, okay, I'm ready for the next step. You should be doing this for, I think, more than 100 words, even, like as much as you can enjoy doing this process, and then actually you can go to the next step and do it together with step 1. So for step 2, you should use both dictionaries for new words, but not every word. The purpose here is to slowly develop your ability to do searches in Japanese, but at the same time, you should feel that you can rely on English for your comprehension. So actually, even if you do understand the definition in Japanese at this step 2, I recommend that you should also check the English translation or the English dictionary for confirmation. And also, I don't think that you should be checking every word. You should do a selection, and that is up to each person, but for example, I think it's a nice idea to start with verbs. So every time you find a new verb that you don't know, then you check that verb in the Japanese dictionary first. I can show you an example. Let's see in the jisho.org, okay? Tokeru. You know this word? Tokeru. It means to melt, to thaw, to fuse, which is fine, but then tokasu means to dissolve, and here it says to melt. So what's the difference? Well, if you see the jisho.org, you see that it talks about transitive and intransitive verbs, which in Japanese are called tadoshi for transitive verbs and jidoshi for intransitive verbs. But you can get a better idea of how that works if you see the definitions in Japanese. You see, we can see, okay, you just saw tokeru. We have to change this here to Nihongo to find the correct dictionary. Okay, digital digest is fine. Tokeru, 固体が熱や薬品などによって液状になる. And here an example, 氷が溶ける. Or ある物質が液体の中に平均に混じって液体と一体になる. So this is like the dissolve definition, and the first one is the melt definition, like 砂糖が水に溶ける。油は水に溶けない, and so on. But what about 溶かす? When you see 溶かす, the definition number 1 here, 薬品や熱を加えて固形物を液状にする. So the other one is something that turns into a liquid, and here is to make something turn into a liquid, like 鉄を溶かす, butter を溶かす. So you know that the difference between the tokeru and tokasu is that the tokasu is when somebody or something actively makes the thing of like butter here melts, while the tokeru is when it naturally happens with ice if you leave it at room temperature, for example. And the definitions in Japanese will make it very clear for you, and this way you start to understand, for example, the difference between different verbs, transitive, intransitive verbs that sometimes in English can be only one verb, like to melt, but in Japanese they can be separate. So you slowly adapt your brain to these differences, and you keep doing that for, I don't know, I like to apply the 80-20 rule here. When you feel that for 80% of the time you read the definition in Japanese and you actually feel like you don't even need to, you should, but you feel like you don't even need to check the definitions in English, that's when you're ready to go to step number 3. So in step number 3, you start checking Japanese definitions more often, and you only use English when you cannot understand the Japanese definition. And you can expand your scope of search from not only verbs, but you can add, for example, adjectives as well. The purpose here is to start thinking in Japanese, but it's still totally okay to check English if you need to. It's not like you're a failure for checking English. And I will show you how this step is important to develop your ability to think only in Japanese. Okay, so there is this word that perhaps you don't know. Tashinameru. The kanji is also very difficult. Do you know this one? Oh, let me change it to Nihongo. Tashinameru. So what does tashinameru mean? 良くない点に対して注意を与える. Do you understand what this means? Actually, even though the word is not super easy per se, because it's not super common, it's still an easy definition in my opinion. 良くない点に対して注意を与える. Now, can you translate the meaning of this word to your native language right now? What I do know is that I can't. I mean, I read this, I get the idea, so I know that if I wanted to express the same idea, I wanted to tashinameru someone in my native language, I know which kind of words I would use, but I'm not sure if that's the exact literal translation for this word. And you know what that means? That means that now this tashinameru is a word that only exists in your Japanese vocabulary, which means that it's a concept that you can only express in Japanese now. So you see, you're creating your Japanese mind from there. And it's very important to make it clear that for you to be able to say, oh, I understand this definition, you don't have to be able to translate it perfectly to English or your native language. You have to be able to understand the definition, and that's it for this step. Every time that you understand the definition, then but you don't really know how to translate it directly to another language, then you know you're in the right direction. And then again, you do it for a while. I mean, you follow the 80-20 rule, when 80% of the time when you check a word, be it a verb or adjective, whatever, and you understand the definition without having to check for the English definition, then you are ready to go to step number 4. So step number 4, the final step, is similar to step 3, but not only you use Japanese definitions to learn Japanese, but everything you do regarding your Japanese studies is done only in Japanese. So the purpose here is to fully immerse yourself in the language, which will gradually allow you to start thinking in Japanese. But then again, like, if you let me borrow an expression that I introduced in another video of mine, you have to do it in Rinkyohen way. You have to adapt accordingly, and if you need the English for a particular grammar structure or expression, whatever, then of course go for the English one. And anyway, if you read the definition in Japanese and you don't understand, you can always expand your knowledge from the definition within the definition. Okay, I thought about another word. Let's see here. You know what sasai means? Sasai. So, okay. Sasai. Amari juyo de wa nai sama, toru ni taranai sama. Just from the amari juyo de wa nai sama, you get the meaning of what sasai means, but here it also says toru ni taranai sama. So what does toru ni taranai mean? 問題として取り上げる価値もない些細なことでもある. But anyway, if you focus on the first part where all the words you should know, 問題として取り上げる価値もない. And you can expand your knowledge from there more and more the more you study Japanese. And you never need English after you reach this fourth stage, this fourth step. So I hope I could show you how using the only Japanese dictionaries over time will allow you to develop your Japanese mind, or how you can use the dictionary to expand your knowledge in Japanese. I know that it's not easy to go from one step to the other step, but I think that's a realistic plan that you can follow in order to finally someday be able to study Japanese only using Japanese, and eventually reach that level that you think in Japanese, like when we talked about the tashinameru. But you should keep in mind that that's not something that happens overnight. It's not like step 1, day 1, step 4 is day 4. It's probably something that might take more than 1 year. And of course, if you're a total beginner, I think you should not even start step 1 yet. Start step 1 after you have acquired enough vocabulary to be able to do that. And I'm talking about perhaps start step 1 after you know at least 1,000 words. Maybe not 1,000, at least 500, but it's not something that you start from the very beginning, I think. If you do it like the way I did, which was studying by myself, then you will need another language, at least in the beginning. But you should keep in mind that eventually that's sakete toranai. You have no choice. There will be a time when you need to make the shift to using only Japanese dictionaries. That being said, for nouns, only for nouns like specific, like physical objects, sometimes a Google search image might be easier than checking the dictionary. I have, just to finish I want to show you an example. You know what tsuchi means? Tsuchi. No, it's not. Tsuchi. This one, the first one that appears. 日本語検索。デジタル大事件。物を叩く工具。頭部は普通円筒形で柄がついている。And so, what is that? Google Images. Oh, this is what the tsuchi means. It's a hammer, of course. It's much easier to visualize what it means when you see it like this. So if you sometimes doesn't understand the definition in Japanese, another option that you have is to check Google Images for it. Even if it's not a noun, sometimes even a verb or an adjective, you might have an idea if you check on Google Images for it. But nouns like this, like hammer and tools, physical objects are much easier to understand than even their definitions in Japanese, like this one. And that's it for this video. Maybe you have already seen that one, but in this other video I talk about how to start learning Japanese using novels. So check it out if you're interested in that, and see you in the next video. Okay, bye bye, mata ne.